We've already seen how you're able to return a view for a given method. We said that the view method is a helper method on the system.web.control MVC.controller base class. So here we're using it, and why we don't have to reference it is because it's part of, again, the controller base class. And it is derived from the action result object. And there are a bunch of different ways, I think 8 different ways to call the view method. Yeah, 8 overloaded versions of the view method. By default, it's going to return a view of the same name as the action result method itself. In the same in the views folder of a subfolder with the same name as the controller. So we're in the products controller. We would expect to see a products folder. We're in the index action method. We're returning a view, and it's going to look in the index.cshtml. Okay, so that's the relationship of all of those, as you probably already know by this point. However, you can also, in one of the overloaded versions of the view method, send in a different name of a view in a string. So here in one of the versions, I can send in the name some other view, right? And it doesn't have to have the same name as the action method. I can also pass in an instance of the view model, and we've seen this working. In fact, here it is working right now, where we're getting a list of products and passing that into the index view through one of the overloaded versions of the view method. And now we can work with this list of products in a strongly typed fashion in the view itself. In some of the overloaded versions, I can also define a master view and pass it in. So if we take a look at, let's see, yeah, version number 7 and 8, you can actually pass in a different master. So instead of using the underscore layout.cshtml, you could add additional layouts that you create if you wanted to change the Chrome around a given page. And I actually used this just recently because I wanted a different look and feel around certain pages based on the type of page or the type of information on the page. And so programmatically I determined which one I wanted to use and then passed it in as a parameter to the view method. All right. So what's really going on here? What is this view method really doing? Well, calling the view method returns a view result object. You can hover your mouse cursor over it. You can see that by calling view, it returns a view result object. And we return that view result object to the caller. Who's the caller? Well, at this point, suffice it to say that the internals of ASP.NET MVC are intricate, and they allow for a high degree of pluggability, which usually means complexity if you're trying to understand what's going on. In other words, you can plug in your code in many different levels and enhance or entirely replace the functionality that's provided out of the box. So if you take a look at the PDF that's available at this URL, and so you'll come to a web page that looks like this, and you can download the PDF document here, and I've already downloaded it and opened it up, and you can see that they give you a high-level view and a more detailed level view of what's going on through a series of boxes and arrows and so forth, and with explanations. And by all means, you're welcome to go through this. I understand about 70% of what's going on here, and some of it I'm not sure exactly what's going on or why it's being called at that particular point. But there's a lot to take in here. In a nutshell, based on the route, and an instance of a controller is created, and the action method on that controller is invoked, and so that's what's going on here in this green dot area, and the green dot is exploded out here to the lower left hand corner of that page. But again, the action method is invoked, and what's returned from the action method is an action result. Most likely that's what's being returned from the view method, a view result object. So at this point, the view result can be inspected and modified by filters. You can see that going on here. Invoke action with action filters. And an example of a filter might be an authentication filter. You see the blue dot below it. That's an example of a filter that's being applied to our view result object, and that might modify the way what's rendered by the view result depending on the privileges that the user has in the system. Again, it's pretty advanced stuff, but it's basically you're building, filtering, and then go ahead and print yourself out, right? So finally, after all the filters have been executed, the view result object's execute result method will be called. And at this point, the Razor View engine is employed to interpret the CS-HTML's code as well as the instance of the view model that has been passed down up to this point. And it will attempt to emit the proper markup then and output to the output stream back to the end user. So again, we're building, filtering, and then boom, execute, and go ahead and render out all the HTML and send it back to the caller. So that's a gross oversimplification. Again, you'll find that some of this is pretty well documented, and then some of this you're not going to be actually able to find much documentation on. You probably need to go out and actually read the source code for MVC. It is available, by the way, in order to figure out exactly what's going on and where you can plug in. Personally, I'm really not interested in doing that. I haven't hit the kind of requirements that are necessary to get into the source code of ASP.NET MVC. But if you do, then you're probably way beyond what I can offer in this course, frankly. So I think the main takeaway is that if you need to go deep into the rabbit hole, you certainly can. There's nothing there to stop you, but the practical value in talking about what's going on with the view result method, or the view result that comes from the view method, that's returned from the view helper method, is that you can now isolate the controller and the action method and unit test that action method to ensure that it's returning the right object, the correct view result object or some other result type, given the input or the current state of the application. So we'll talk more about unit testing in ASP.NET MVC in another series entirely. But again, just to emphasize this, you can test the action result method by inspecting what's being returned from the view, isolating it from the actual Razor View engine so you can see, is it giving the view engine the correct information, right? All right, so before we leave the topic of what's getting returned from an action method, I want to talk about redirection. So if we take a look in the scaffolded code in our product controller.cs, you'll see that in the create and in the edit, the post versions of both of those, that there is this redirect to action passing in index, and essentially what we're doing here is the index is the name of the action method inside of this same controller that should be executed. So in this case, the purpose is to redirect the display after you've created or edited one of the products. You want to redirect to the index action and execute that, right? And so it's going to show either a list of products with the deleted product, the edited product, the newly created product, whatever the case might be. And so you may want to redirect to another page, maybe a confirmation page. You certainly can do that with redirect to action as well. Or you might want to redirect to a receipt page after a purchase. Whatever the case might be, you can redirect to an action inside of the same controller. There's also overloaded versions of this method where you can redirect to an action inside of a different controller, or you can redirect while passing the action input parameters, redirect to a specific route, or redirect to an entirely different website altogether. And again, if you take a look at the different redirects, so return redirect, you can see that there's a bunch of different versions of the redirect method: redirect, redirect to action, redirect to route, redirect to action permanent, redirect to route permanent, and so on. So in some of these cases, the permanent cases, you may want the redirections to be permanent. In other words, you want to tell the requester that, and maybe this is a spider for a search engine, to use a new URL and replace the old URL in their index. And so when redirection happens, a message is being sent back to the web browser that, hey, what you really want to do is now request this different page. So request the index page or request this whole different website, right? And so this is done through an HTTP code, and the HTTP code is the result code 302, which is a redirection. Now, if you're not familiar with the HTTP, the different status codes, take a look at Wikipedia here. I'll navigate to it real quick. And I'll just search for the phrase list of HTTP status codes. And you'll see there is a bunch of different status codes. The 200s are basically success. The 100s are informational. The 300s are the ones that we're talking about with regards to redirection. So the 302 is found. And so if you're returning this, you're basically saying the response to this request can be found at a different URL using a GET method. So actually you can see that this is a 303, but the industry adopted norm is to actually pass back a 302. I don't understand why. A 301 means it's been moved permanently, so that redirect to action permanent or redirect to route permanent will pass back a 301. And then the last kind of category here, that at least last category that we'll discuss. Yeah. Oh, there's 500s too, the 500 server error. But the 400s, the ones that you'll see most often are the 404, the not found, or a 400, which is a bad request, and so on. Okay? So hopefully this helps you understand the nature of the view method and what it returns, the view result. What a view result is, it's actually all the information about what's going to get returned to the view engine and get executed and passed to the view engine through the ASP.NET MVC internals, the pipeline that it goes through, and that view result will be filtered and other rules applied to it before it actually gets executed. And then also we talked about redirection in this video and how that occurs through the redirect to action or redirect to route, or the permanent versions of those, and what is actually going on with telling the web browser, go back and request this instead, and request this on a permanent basis, as the case might be. Okay, hopefully that makes all that clear, and doing great. Let's continue on the next lesson. See you there. Thanks.